Welcome everybody. Today I am here by candlelight with a good old friend of mine, Taylor Lemmon. Taylor has served in the military since 2010, did a couple tours over in Afghanistan. So we're going to talk about his experience in the military and his experience overseas. Of course, Taylor, let me start this by saying thank you for your service to our country.
Absolutely.
I have a huge admiration for all of the men and women in the military, for everything that you do. I have no experience of the world at all other than like movies, TV shows. I watch a lot of documentaries because I'm really interested in that whole world, but I don't know if I would have ever been able, whatever. We don't have to get into that or not. But of course, thank you for all your time and all the sacrifice that you've done with you and all your friends. Yeah, so let's light these candles.
It's an honor to be here. I appreciate you having me.
The honor is all mine.
Cheers.
I don't want to go to the very beginning of Taylor. I want to do that towards the end.
That's certainly a long story.
It's an extremely long and interesting roller coaster of a story. But let's start this kind of conversation back in, I guess, 2010, which is when I believe you first started your military adventure. So where were you at the beginning of 2010? Or I guess it was September in 2010. Where were you?
Yes.
What was the beginning?
Absolutely. So I had actually just come home from attending Coastal Carolina University there, playing soccer. And it just, for me, I was always, motivated in other aspects other than academics. I'll be the first one to admit that. And so my family was military. I was home just trying to really figure out a direction. The military was always in my future, I felt, but I didn't think it was going to be that immediate. So I walked in the recruiter station in 2010 and basically said, hey, I want to be a Marine. And from there, started filling out the paperwork, going to MEPS, get my physicals. Hadn't even told my parents yet. Just was kind of doing it. I was, obviously over the age and could certainly make my own decisions at that point. Right. And I said, hey, you know what? My father's a Marine. He's the only Marine in the family. If you can't beat him, join him. And so that was kind of the start of my tour. My parents found out. Similar to what most parents, or should I say most mothers, would feel when their kids are wanting to go. Why? Are you sure? Is this really it? She had certainly experienced a lot of that with my father and his tour of duties. So
where did your dad serve?
So my dad was in the Marine Corps as well, served over in, I believe he was stationed over in the Philippines for some time,
okay.
As well as over in country as well.
Right.
So for my mom, it was, this, oh my goodness, not my boy. And then my dad was like, it's about damn time. Like,
let's go.
Hurry up already. What have you been sitting in my basement for, a couple of months now trying to figure it out? Like, at least you're doing something. So for him, it was a little bit more of motivating. And I think he definitely embraced it a lot more, and eventually my mom got on board. Went to boot camp. I'd probably say I think it was like September 10th, 11th, or 12th. It was right around the anniversary of September 11th when I stepped on the yellow footprints. I believe it was the 12th. And yeah, the rest was kind of history. It was the biggest eye-opening experience. Mistake I had made up to my biggest mistake I had made up to that point, really.
So you mentioned, and this is something that just came up to mind. You mentioned September 11th, being in a military family. What was the vibe? Let's see, September 11th,
I was in 5th grade, 3rd commercial.
Yep. So what was it like? Like, it was, for me and my family, it was obviously crazy. We don't have a lot of military people in our family. So somebody who's actually physically in a military family, what was it like for you guys?
So I remember just I got pulled out of class by my neighbors, or by one of my best friend's parents at the time. Came home and basically my dad was upstairs packing. So I mean, that kind of started his adventure out to the Middle East, and from there kind of never looked back in terms of his career and what he did over there. But for me, it was a little bit of a eye-opening experience. It was the first time I really was not going to be around my father. He wasn't going to be around me.
Yeah, for sure, man.
So very close to our grandparents who were also military, so they really stepped in and filled that void.
Yeah, that's. I also remember walking home from my sister came and picked me up from Rachel Carson.
Yeah, you can see the helicopters from our house. We live so close to DC and the Pentagon. I mean, you can see all of them just hovering up there.
So you are part of the 1st Battalion Alpha Company. Drill or
Yep.
get killed. I mean,
Yeah.
what is that about?
Yeah. So at boot camp, there's literally only two things that they do: you learn drill, or you get your body slayed. And so we were the closest battalion at in terms of location. 1st Battalion was the closest to the parade deck, which is where you did a lot of your marching, you learn your cadence, your step,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of your early movements, troop movements, as you would almost call them in a way, formations as well. So, you were either getting slayed if you weren't doing drill, or if you were doing drill and it was just going really bad and you're having a bad day, they would just take you over to the sand pit and they drill you, or they kill you, excuse me. So uh, it was like sugar cookies was the often term. So we, end up drilling, doing really bad, or somebody would mess up. You go run through the showers in your full uniforms. They take you to the sand pit. You'd be doing push-ups, burpees, rolling around. So you'd be covered in sand. Then they take you back to the drill field, and you'd stand in formation and you'd march and march and march. So yeah, drill or get killed was
How,
the phrase we
so,
often heard from our kill ad.
again, I've known you for a really long time, and it's funny. It's honestly funny for me to picture you doing this kind of stuff, just because the stage that I knew you in your life, you were not
No.
somebody that I would have envisioned in front of a drill sergeant. How were you though? Like, if you were there watching you do this stuff as a young
Terrified.
yeah.
I looked terrified. I mean, again, it's one of those things, and I think the Marine Corps does a very good piece, or a very good job at, when you go in there, you're very much an individual. Doesn't matter how many, I played on so many sports teams, and was a captain on some of those, and was so much of a team player. But you really don't feel as a big of an individual as you do your first couple of weeks, first month at Parris Island. I mean, they break you down. They mentally, physically, you were in a place that your body has never been at that point in time. And you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about the brothers to the right, left of you, how they're struggling, how you're pulling through. But I'd be fooling myself if I didn't look back and say, hey, that first phase, I was scared. I was, it was an eye opener. It was.
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of the experience, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that most of the people around you were not feeling the same exact way, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, you were definitely motivated. I think, you realized there was a purpose for you being there, and there's guys already falling out and dropping out, and you're able to measure yourself to a certain metric early on. But, even growing up in a military family where discipline, cleanliness, that is just held amongst, the highest order in those types of households. Uh, it was still a stone throw away from that. It
oh
was.
yeah. Talk to me about your 20th birthday in North Carolina.
Yes. So
Set the scene for us.
I had graduated boot camp. I got to go home for the holidays, and now I was off to Camp Geiger, North Carolina, for Marine combat training. It's in the winter. It's in the dead of January, so probably some of the coldest times in North Carolina. And we're packing up to go out. We wake up, we're packing up, and we're going on an 8-mile ruck. And it just so happens that it's a blizzard, a massive blizzard in North Carolina for my 20th birthday. 8 miles. At the time, I believe it was like one of the hardest snowfalls that North Carolina had seen in quite some time. And yeah, let's just say we were all hurting. And it's a birthday I'll never forget. Never forget that one.
Greatest birthday of your life.
Yeah, indeed. Probably not many birthdays are spent ever like that again. Let's put it that way.
That's so whack. All right, so you become a combat engineer. First of all, what is 1371?
So that's just your MOS code. So that's kind of how they abbreviate you, the grunts and everything. They're O3. So you've got your O311, which is just your typical grunt. I think, and from there, your O331s, O332s, and so on. So they really just, it's a code similar to a job title, but it's more specific to the military. They have those in all the branches.
All right. So you become a combat engineer, which I think, if I remember correctly from you, you've always been a guy really, really good with your hands. Not just you were a soccer goalie, but just gadgets, it was
very hands-on,
doing work with your hands and stuff. So this, I assume, came very naturally to you. Was this the plan always at the beginning, or is this something that you got into training, went through all this different training, found a niche that you really liked, and kind of pursued that?
So in all reality, when you join the Marine Corps at your recruiter's office, you sign your contract, and those contracts state your job title. So you kind of sign early on,
Okay.
knowing I'm going to go into this. So sometimes you can sign specific. I'm going to be a 1371 combat engineer, or you would sign a construction open contract, which is basically you can go into the construction field, but the Marine Corps is going to put you where they want. So you could either be a motor team mech, you could be a bulk fueler, a water dog. There's all these electric guy. There's all of these jobs in the Marine Corps. Cook. That if you sign an open contract, you'll go wherever that branch needs you to go, wherever they need to fill bodies. So I was kind of lucky having a little bit of leverage with my father. He kind of, just being legacy. They take that a little bit more seriously. They don't really want to, I guess, throw you under the bus or throw them
Sure.
into a situation. So I kind of had my pick of the litter. Also, you have to take an ASVAB and score very well to have certain jobs open to you as well. So did well enough on that. I kind of, again, had the pick of the litter, and I really wanted to be a sapper, which is an explosive ordnance kind of guy, not EOD per se, but more working with breaching and that kind of, explosives into extraction and VIP type fast team stuff.
So you were in Jacksonville, North Carolina. What is this camp called? Camp Lejeune?
Camp Lejeune. Yep. So it's Camp Lejeune. They get mad at me if I call it right, but it is camp. We call it Camp Lejeune. So
Camp Lejeune.
North Carolina. Yeah, Jacksonville, North Carolina is the town right outside. It's a big time military town. So if you've driven anywhere near Quantico or any military base, really the town of that existence is strictly because of that military. So you would just have years and years of retirees there, but it's a nice little place.
So you're living there and going essentially back and forth to Afghanistan for a certain amount of time and coming back, or how does that work?
Yeah. So basically, your fleet time, or what they call your fleet Marine Corps term, is where you're stationed full time. So that's where I was in French
Yeah.
Creek, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune. So from there, yeah, really, it's just you have your rotation. So if your battalion is up on a rotation, you would get selected, and you would be able to train and go and deploy. Or you can get attached. Your company could get attached if you were a specialized company, or you could, they pull bits and pieces from everywhere if they need certain specific job titles or jobs that are not being filled by their current teams or battalions. So being an engineer, we are very flexible that we could go with really anybody because
Sure.
we have such a unique niche skill set, like you said, that, a
Yeah.
grunt's not going to be able to do something that we per se do, or, we're not going to be able to do something per se a grunt may do, even though every Marine is a rifleman, but there's certainly certain things they train on a daily basis. We train on a daily basis.
So I don't want to jump completely into your deployment yet, even though the rest of it is pretty much screw it. Let's whatever. All right. So
Yeah, it's a couple of them.
let's vaguely go
Yeah.
over it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because there's still a couple like locations and things that I want to get into just to kind of tell your story a little bit more. So you're deployed 3 separate times from 6 to 8 months in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, which essentially, and this was what year? 2011.
2011 was my first. Yeah, it was my first one.
Operation Enduring Freedom is essentially the response, I guess you could say, to 9/11.
Yeah,
Drawn
it was
out
our first
over
push.
a long
Yeah,
time, right?
major first push in Afghanistan as well.
Yeah. Against, I guess you can just call it the war on terror in Afghanistan, which
Yep.
put into a bigger envelope.
Very confusing now because it was the Taliban. Now we're fighting ISIS. The Taliban is our friend. So a lot of terms, even by media, get thrown out there and are incorrect, right? You hear we're signing a peace agreement. Sorry, off topic. We're signing a peace agreement with the Taliban, right? Because they want to get rid of the ISIS. So again, there's certain things that I think even the media to this day doesn't fully grasp or understand. And I think it's definitely something that even in my time, our enemy changed. Right. So
Yeah.
even for us, it was something that we were first fighting the Taliban. My first deployment. Second, we were really just fighting a terror insurgency at that point, and it really hadn't been renamed. It was Taliban, Al Qaeda. Those were certainly the names being tossed around, but that certainly changed. I mean, the different types of extremist groups out there, and drugs or money. Money is power out in the Middle East, and certainly that's how they can build a resistance or a regime of different types of insurgents.
Before we get more into that, which we're definitely going to, let's talk about, I think anytime somebody talks to somebody in the military who spent time overseas on tours, multiple tours, the living conditions and the food are the most from like a normal civilian. Those are the
Yeah.
most, that and like the action, right? So you sent me, you were at Camp Leatherneck, which was,
That's basically your main base. So that's where everybody ends up. You
yeah.
fly into, Bagram. Next to Bagram is Camp Leatherneck, and that's basically essentially a Camp Lejeune in the middle of Afghanistan.
So explain Camp Leatherneck to me, because it, when I read your description, I was like,
It sounds
what?
like Florida. Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like yeah. I mean, it's so they have pubs, they have hair salons, they got Starbucks, smoothie places, movie theaters. You got Wi-Fi everywhere. You're sleeping in nice cans. Some when you're getting ready to head out to FOBs or you just arrive, you get some crappy tents with some cots. Don't get me wrong. But if you're going to be on Leatherneck for a long period of time and you're not deploying out to a FOP or a COP or anything like that, you'll get a nice can. I mean, air conditioned, Wi-Fi, outlets. You get the full deal. So
So how long in your full deployment do you think you spent at
maybe
Camp
maybe a
Leatherneck?
month, maybe a month. Maybe if I was going to say overall 3 tours, probably just 3 months. I spent a
Yeah.
couple weeks there. You go on ASVAB. So ASVAB is the guys that go ahead of time. A lot of the times they're team leads or guys that are going to be stationed on a FOB most of the time. So we'll deploy before the whole battalion or regiment. Go out there, be the first ones to wear FOB, do the changeover work with that current in command that's currently operating on that base, do a changeover, and that way my team gets there as they're leaving. So a lot of the times it's an infill with your team and an exfill of the previous staff, kind of like a type. So really for me, it was a short time, but it was always a great time while we were there. That's for
It was
sure.
my favorite time.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah. I mean, they had the chow hall, for instance. I mean, every day of the month or every day of the week, should I say, was a theme. You had Mexican, Caribbean, Mediterranean, Greek, American. That was always fun because you had burgers and dogs, and you were getting some good food. But you did well and you ate well there at Leatherneck, so it was never really a struggle.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Trust me,
That's
it's come a long way since Vietnam and Korea. That's all of
well, that's
that.
what I mean. So like
Yeah.
somebody like me who like I like that isn't in the movies.
No, 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 no. You see the cops and the fops. That's what you see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, Musa Qala. So what
yeah.
was that in 2011 you were there?
So yeah, so Musa Qala was a town that was taken over. I want to say in 2007. RIP. Those guys that place was a massive, massive Taliban stronghold, and basically we took over the town and basically built a top around a couple of buildings. So we kind of had a compound to ourselves that we created with HESCO barrier. A couple of big, strong, structured buildings to house military, our comm staff, S4, S1, whatever we wanted to operate out of there. Um, and then from there, you just kind of work in the bazaars and you operate there. So Musa Qala was, I think, the second northeast fob, farthest northeast fob in the Helmand province. The second or the highest was Kajaki, which was pretty critical as well, holding that Kajaki Dam. Um, but for Musa Qala, that was just a good operation. I was there. My first deployment, we were actually shutting that down as I geared out and ready was deploying home. So we turned that over to the Afghan army and set them up with some supplies. But sadly, I'd probably say within a couple of months, that was retaken over by the Taliban.
What was, so again, this is your first deployment, 2011. You're in Musa Qala. What was, so specifically speaking as a combat engineer, what were the kind of main goals for you to as an individual?
So we did. I was a lot of like sweeping on patrols in the bazaar or doing mine patrols. We did a lot of route clearance, security route clearance for logistical vehicles and stuff like that, providing a lot of security. Again, on base, it ranged from helping out the electrical guys, the water dogs, motor team, mech guys, bulk fuelers. As an engineer, they're your family. So whenever you have an opportunity to help them out, learn another trade
Right.
skill, it's just going to better yourself moving forward. So that's what I spent a lot of my time on. If I wasn't out on patrols with those guys or doing things that I was needed, helping around the base, you always want to get in with the chow cook. If you got a cook on base, got to get in with him and make sure that you're connecting with the laundry guy and the water dogs. So you get warm showers. You get your laundry back pretty quickly. You always get good food from the cook. So just being an engineer, you have that ability. They're always sending you stuff from Leatherneck out on these FOPs, being in a mech. So we have that capability of pulling some leverage or pulling some strings and get some guys some good stuff. So
So
I'll send
first
you some
deployment,
videos. I'll send you some pictures as well. I actually have
I would love
pictures of the fob and stuff. We made a little
anything.
deck and a open pool, and
Yeah,
so we made a little area for us and the whole base really to come and just kind of relax after a long patrol or something. So I'll
yeah, I
definitely
would
send
love to
those
take
in.
it. That would be awesome. So 2011 you're in Musa Qala, and then Kajaki.
Yep.
What, and I guess your second and third tour, 2012 and 2013, you were both in the Kajaki Fob.
Yep.
What region is that?
So that's still the Helmand province. That's
Okay.
basically the dam at the top of the Helmand province, and that's pretty darn critical in terms of security. Working with the people again during the Obama administration, it was really win the hearts and minds of the Afghani people. If we can help win their hearts and minds, we could really help root out the Taliban, Al Qaeda, the insurgencies. Again, because they did a lot of intimidation within that region. Most important piece again was the dam because that was controlling all of the major water flow into the Helmand province, which people rely on their crops to grow, sell, and have money. The Taliban wanted it because they can then control the water and say, hey, you're not going to grow this food. You're going to grow poppy, or you're going to grow opium, or you're going to grow this and that. So marijuana, I don't know how many times we drove past massive marijuana fields and we had to call the contractors out and come burn them. So, over there, the Taliban really wanted to control these things because they can control the region and really benefit them long term, certainly. So, it was, let me just put it this way, it was probably the tougher of the deployments at Kajaki and Musa Qala.
So when you get there in 2012, was the dam in the
Yeah,
US's, I don't want
yeah,
to say control, but we were already there
yeah. We'd
providing
had the dam for
security,
quite some
things like
time.
that.
Yeah. Even on my first deployment, I had other guys from my unit that were stationed there as well. And so, I mean, we had it for quite some time, but it was definitely a hot point. I mean, I can tell you when I was there, it was, basically clockwork, the amount of times we get mortared or we take IDF, which is indirect fire. So they're just driving on the back of a truck, shooting, popping mortars off. And, so we can't necessarily lock onto them. So they're a moving target. So some of that, they grew and they're not as dumb as people I guess would think. They're not
Right.
just guys that don't know how to do that. They've been fighting wars longer than most of us have been alive. So their tactics and trade is quite well. Not even to say that they were trained by, the Americas quite some time before. So
This is probably the one specific question that I have that's a little bit more extreme. Could you recount, if you want to, one of the more dangerous situations that you encountered?
I'll definitely talk about probably my scariest moment.
Or
It was
that.
like at my time. It was my second tour.
So 2012.
Yep. And we were doing a route clearance, and we just kind of had some markers out in the road. And what a lot of the times Taliban would use markers, stacks of rocks, a little bit of an elevated dirt pile, ant mound, what it would look like, where they would lay an IED or a marker for them to have an IED later out in their route for us, so they could basically start that time or timer or call, et cetera, et cetera. So we saw a couple markers out in the road, and we dismounted and we started to do a little bit of a foot patrol. So I'm out there with the minesweeper, and I got a couple buddies behind me, and we're walking, and then all of a sudden I step and I hear a crunch. And normally that's not a good thing because then you take some pressure off. You never know what that could be. It could be an ID, it could be an old landmine. Who knows what it is? So I basically, at that point, think it's the end. I'll be honest. That I pretty freaking nervous. Had to radio back and tell everyone had to back out, and had to have somebody come over and basically slowly but surely dig my foot out. And it was probably up to that point. We had been some firefights, took some. Man, it was probably at that point the first time I really was like, oh shit. I don't know if you.
Yeah, definitely fire away.
Here, but oh shit. And I'll be honest, I've done a lot of crazy things and things, a lot of people you look back on, you're like, dang, like, how'd you make it out of that? But this is the first time I really probably had that oh shit moment. Turned out to be a Diet Coke can. So, yeah. So you can imagine 10 minutes just basically thinking you and your buddy digging out your foot is, if it's going to be your last little shit. So we're both kind of just trying to keep it light. I'm shaking vigorously. I'm not going to lie. He's trying to tell me to stay still. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things. I think looking back on it, probably up to that point was the scariest moment of my deployment, and it was probably the least harmful of my deployment at that point, which was kind of ironic.
So you have your foot on a Diet Coke can, which of course you don't know it's a Diet Coke can.
Yeah.
So somebody else has to come pretty much get you out of that situation.
Yeah.
So
I mean, at that point,
you involuntarily are bringing somebody else into a potentially lethal situation.
oh, I let's just put it this way. I did not want anybody to come there, but of course, EOD was like, hey, if you even try to bend down and you shift your weight the wrong way, something could happen, right? So, um, it was one of those where we tried to use the sickle. So, guy was behind huge little, probably 12, 15-foot rod with a hook on the end, so you can try to see dig around. So they did that for quite some time, and we just couldn't find any wires. So, eventually EOD came up and he started just kind of digging the outline with his fingers, and then slowly just kind of went in and eventually saw the red and the silver that was kind of worn down, and was like, I think this might be a Diet Coke can. It's not thick enough, or the depth isn't big enough for it to be anything that I think is going to be of danger. So, I think it was like 11 minutes. I think it was like 11 minutes and 42 seconds after I stepped on it, I finally got to like relieve some pressure, and there she goes.
What
So
is your take on Diet Coke nowadays?
I've never drink a Diet Coke. I still never drink Diet Coke. I really, to be honest, I don't even know they had Diet Coke over there because we didn't get it on base. So I don't know where they would have gotten it from.
So I had my experience playing college basketball, and the bond you form with people that you struggle with, I think, is the greatest strengthening of a bond. And like one of the fondest memories I have is when we all got in trouble and we had a run at like 5 a.m. with our coach, pitch black down a path, like running into trees, like running into bushes, running into creeks. Like
Yeah.
at the time, the worst experience. Now looking back on it, it's like the greatest thing to talk about because like that strength of that bond. And as a college athlete, I'm like there's no other experience other than college sports where you experience something like this. And then I was like, well, obviously nothing even comes close to being in the military and being overseas and on tour. Is there a way for you to put into words the relationships that you built in that setting over your time over there?
Yeah, to be honest, the relationships are truly built back in garrison. I think, you get selected to go. You normally have about a 6 month window. Sometimes it's shortened to 3 months, just depending on how quickly if you're getting reassigned or pulled. Um, but in all reality, I was very blessed. My first deployment, I went and actually had a cousin over on my FOP, so I was very close to him. But just building up to the deployment, um, you're with those guys 24/7. You're living with them. You're training with them. You're getting the crap kicked out of you in training. You're doing breakfast, lunch. Literally, you're literally doing everything with those guys. So you're struggling, they're struggling. You're thriving, they're thriving. And I think that's what really builds your camaraderie, your chemistry, and it's similar to, like you said, at that college basketball team. You have your highs and your lows. For instance, your preseason, right, is probably when you guys build your most camaraderie to get into the season.
Yeah.
And that's similar to what I would say, the pre-deployment is like your preseason. Your deployment training is probably your regular season when you get ready to go in the playoffs. The real deal when it really counts is probably that deployment. So you're with these guys, 6, 8 months every day, 24/7 drinking, you're drinking with these guys, you're partying with these guys, you're fighting with these guys, you're ripping each other's heads off on a daily basis. And I think, to be honest, probably some of my best friends, if not guys that I will talk to for the rest of my life, no matter what, came from the Marine Corps. I mean, I remember the second day I got to the fleet, I walked to my buddy's barracks room and he's just ripping some dude apart in a wrestling match. We grapple all the time, we spar all the time, you fight. It's just a bunch of dudes on testosterone, locked in cages half the times. And I think it just builds the brotherhood, right? Like you're never trying to kill somebody, or, if you're that angry, it gets separated. And I, I also came in at the time where you really couldn't take everyone to the tree line anymore. Like if you wanted to, end a scruffle. Um, so, it's certainly, you had to pick your poison, but definitely we used to just grapple all the time, fight all the time. I think it's how you just got tougher. It's how you wasted time. And I think a lot of the point, it's just how you grew closer. I shout out my buddy Sambo, Willie. He's one of the guys that I truly have we're basically brothers. We should have been brothers somehow. I don't know how we're not. Um, Cola, Heredia, McIntyre, Addaball, Brozo, those boys, we were in the schoolhouse together, went to the fleet, deployed together. They deployed a second time on a different unit without me. So, I felt left out, but I got another bunch of group of, great guys, Foster, Jimmy, Long, and Ray that I, got to, those are all last names. So, um,
Yeah,
that I, got to hang out with and, it just grow. And those guys are your brothers. We do reunions, we all get together, all the wives know each other, we all talk about each other's kids. So I'd say, out of my friends from home and back home, I have a couple of group chats, but I probably get even more chatter from those Marine Corps guys because we're probably talking like every second or every day. They hit me up a couple of times already on this podcast.
Yeah. So. Well, I appreciate you saying that our experiences were similar as a college athlete.
It is. Military. I mean,
they're similar in like the way it happens, but like, I mean,
well, everyone's adventures are different, right? You can even say it's a sorority, right? You can say sorority, fraternities. Those guys are bonded in the same fashion, right? Sort of
it's the same fashion. Yeah,
we're just doing different things.
Yeah, a little bit different. There are a couple of key timelines that were going on in the world, specifically in your world during your deployment times. So 2011, again, you're in Musa Qala. Osama Bin Laden is killed in 2011. Where were you when that happened?
It was
May. It was in May.
I was actually in my barracks at the time. It was right before I believe I had deployed. I think it was like a couple of weeks. I got a text from Matt Wallerstedt, and I was actually sleeping at the time.
Yeah.
And he texted me just like, holy shit, we did it. We freaking did it. And I was like, what? Like, I was like getting ready to go. Mental state was kind of somewhere else. And I finally came to the realization. I got the alert, the Americans had killed Osama Bin Laden. And it was pretty sick. It was a great feeling. It was something that I think I'll never forget. They don't normally let tanks drive on the streets of bases because they mess up the concrete, but they were ripping and rolling. I mean, flags were flying. I mean, that's
awesome.
Yeah, it was about as patriotic as you could probably get. And I mean, you can only imagine guys in the military are pretty freaking patriotic and love the country. So it was a hell of a celebration, I'll tell you.
That's cool. Another date we have October 7th, 2011. This is probably a different emotional response. That marked the 10 years of the war in Afghanistan.
Yep.
I don't know if this was something that was talked about. Again, this was in October, so I'm not sure exactly where you were.
You don't really talk about it. Yeah. I mean, those things, when you're in the military, it's kind of one of those, you get a national defense ribbon if you serve during the wartime. And at that point, they're kind of handing them out like candy. You get them out to boot camp. To be honest, right? Like if you join the military and you're not wanting to deploy or you're not wanting to go overseas and fight, I think, you're doing a disservice. The one thing I loved about General Mattis in the Marine Corps specifically was he basically got rid of non-deployable units. So, now you can't just go to somewhere and be stationed there forever. You're at some point in time going to have a rotation.
Right.
Obviously, with things winding down, who knows what that rotation is going to be from unit to unit. But, for me, I was always excited to go. I think, just being in the family, my families have served in wars, my fathers, my grandfathers, uncles. So, it was one of those things. I think you better go. But at the same time, I just wanted to serve my country. It was something, I felt very admirable and very honored to do. And it was something I felt dedicated to do, and for me, thinking about how long the wars have been going on, we're always fighting wars.
Yeah, that's such a difference because I think that was a big, back here in the States to us regular people, I think in the media that was like a big thing. Like, oh, this marks the 10 years of the war in Afghanistan. And I can see that on the other side being like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're always ready. We're always training to be ready at any time. Exactly. I mean, the Marine Corps, we don't even need a declaration of war. The president could say, you're going to go here, and he's got 150 days to get Congress to sign off. So, for us, we're always ready at a moment's notice. And I think thinking about wars, how long they've gone on is only just going to get you in trouble. So like you said, from our side of the view, it's always, how do we just get most prepared?
Two more timeline dates, March 2012. What I want to talk, where were you in March 2012?
I don't know, they blend together. I might have been trying to think. I think slating to deploy again. I think just about probably another 2 months, month out from deploying again.
So March 2012, before March, there was a lot of U.S. Taliban peace talks and agreements and things getting signed and everything. And then in March 2012, the Taliban canceled talks, I think, over some disagreement over like a prisoner exchange or something. And then the U.S. Afghan tensions flare is kind of like what the keyword is. During that whole process in your time, like, do you like what is your experience firsthand when we read like U.S. Afghan tensions flare? Like, what is that?
They're always flaring.
Yeah. Does that
Yeah,
have
I
any
mean,
effect on you or like the people you're with or?
no, because I think in all reality on the ground, my first and second deployments specifically, we worked very heavily with the Afghan army and Afghan police forces. And, a lot of our mission was supporting them. They were supposed to go out and do a lot of these operations. We're there in fire support, training support, backup. Um, and they a lot of the times didn't get it done. And then you had on the other spectrum, you had ISIS, the Taliban, any extremists infiltrating the Afghan army and the Afghan police and firing on U.S. troops, firing on ally, firing on even Afghan army troops. So tensions over there were always high. It didn't matter if you were in, an Afghan army guy, a translator, Afghan police officer, a Jordan military guy. I think for us, it was always, you're always on your guard. It doesn't matter what uniform they're in. You just need to be ready and aware. And that situational awareness, combat awareness definitely, drives on you. Your stress levels, your anxiety levels are certainly, elevated, but also your reflexes and your senses are already trained to be, I think, at that pinnacle and extend and, keep those, just basically keep that adrenaline going for an extended period of time. And for us, again, it was always just keep your head on a swivel, stay low, move fast, and just continue to communicate. And again, situational awareness was key.
What did any is Skippy like gone?
No,
Were you Skippy over there, or were you what were
I
they
was
calling you?
Lemon. I was Lemon over
Lemon's
there,
a
and
good
then
Lemon's a good military
it's not
name.
bad. It's not bad. And then I got graced with a pretty cool call sign, Juice. So
Lemon juice.
juice, lemon juice, lemon. I got lemonade all the time. Boot camp though was the worst. They called me Mr. Bean because without my beard, I kind of do look like Mr. Bean. And being
A little
adopted,
bit.
not knowing my adopted father, Rowan
Yeah.
Ackerson, if it's you, let me know. Like,
Hit me up. He's probably
yeah.
worth a lot of money. Let's talk about, this is probably going to be my favorite thing to talk about. So my experience with you, I've known you probably since 4th or 5th grade, like basketball camps and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
That's when you were Skippy.
Yeah.
So you were extremely energetic, extremely enthusiastic, and I don't mean these in a
Understatements.
bad way.
Understatements too, but yeah.
Gigantic
Yeah.
personality,
Yep.
full of life.
Yep.
And then we went to high school together, obviously, for 3 years. You're older than me. Had classes together every year.
Yep.
Same thing.
Mr. Lynch is Latin, baby. You got me
Just
through it. You got me through it. Yep.
Eke Romani, just extreme enthusiasm for life, always in a good mood, always not, I wouldn't say you were a troublemaker. I would say you were more of a class clown. And again, I mean that with sincerity as a
I
compliment.
mean, I was gonna say that was definitely me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was always trying to make people laugh. Yeah.
Yes. You're always trying to make people laugh. Growing up, you mentioned earlier that this was kind of something you always planned on doing.
Yep.
And there are parts of your personality from what I know growing up that I would say that would lead you to be a very successful Marine and a great Marine. And then there's parts that I would say, I don't know how Skippy got through that part of training.
Yeah.
How different have you become in your personality? Is the Skippy still there, but you kind of are able to transition into call sign Juice? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
how different have you become through all your training and all your experience?
I definitely think, to be honest, it was better that I did it so early. It gave me the self-discipline I was lacking. Growing up in a military family, everything's very structured. Your home life, your chores, sports, everything's on a regiment. My dad did character building, so every Saturday, growing up when he was home, he would get me up at 6 in the morning, and we go run the Ridgeview track, or do calisthenics, or just do something I get a little reward, right? We go to Old Country Buffet, get a donut, something to reward me for that pain. And I think that slowly but surely caught on. And like you said, I was very energetic. I was very full of life. I was never really truly focused, I think, on one goal. And boot camp and the Marine Corps truly helped me probably find my identity, to be quite honest. If I had to really look back on, it really helped me find my identity and be able to realize there's a time for fun. There's a time for you to get down, buckle down and grind it out. And then, no matter what you're doing in life, the most important lesson is embrace the suck, right? Like nothing is as terrible
Right.
as, the more you whine and complain and delay something, the worse and worse and worse your mental state becomes. So if you can embrace the suck, if you can just find a way to make that bright, see the light at the end of the tunnel, whether that's an imaginary light, whether that's a something to give yourself that motivation, I think that's where Skippy came Skip. If we had to make that comparison.
There you go.
So, yeah, I think just the discipline, the better self-awareness, the higher echelon of self-discipline definitely just kind of helped me grow and become a lot more successful than I probably would have been if I had either delayed, because probably, who knows, wouldn't have gone. So
yeah, I can very much appreciate that. To end on, what is the future for you in terms of your military responsibility, your involvement? What does that look like for you?
So yeah, I mean, I give charities during the holidays are big for me. So Wounded Warriors, a couple of other smaller military nonprofit charities that I know specifically work with. Just giving back to those organizations, keeping spirits up. But for me, military-wise, my career is over. I've been honorably discharged. In Oregon, I re-enlisted into the reserves for 2 years just to kind of, keep it alive and just see what was going on. But time to settle down. And, I have 2 kids. We bought a house now and continue to focus and grow, I think, my next career, which, is going to be hopefully in the technology industry. And I think for now, that military background has given me enough foundation to build on and to really just continue to buckle down and grind. So I'd say military-wise, be a big supporter. I'll never turn my back on them. I always yearly's donating to charities. I think is such an important thing to do, especially since, a lot of the, those charities provided to you, they sent pallets and pallets of food and goodies.
Right. You've seen
while you're out there.
You've seen the response firsthand. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for that, it's definitely, it's meaningful. And then again, I'll be the first one to encourage anybody to go in the military and talk to them about my experiences and what to expect. And I still have guys that are that are deployed. I have guys that went on to become SEAL team members, that are on FAST team, MARSOC members, that have, moved over into the Army and is now in EOD. So, I have a lot of contacts that are still in, and it's always been a blessing to be a part of that community. It's a family for life. So.
All right. Well, Taylor, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to talk. This was awesome. This was really cool. I knew you were going to be awesome to talk to, because
thanks for having me.
You're just a great dude to begin with, but the things you're able to talk about and everything. So with that being said, cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Love you, man.
Love you, man. Talk to you. Thanks for having me once again. It's an honor.